Live. How's it going, Mets fans, wherever you're a fan of? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest live edition of the latest Mets news and rumors to get into this evening, that being January 17th, north of 8 p.m. Eastern. I will be shortly accompanied by our special guest in tonight's show. That is Jim Riley, who is a fantastic baseball talking head at the Ballcap Sports YouTube channel with over 50,000 subscribers. Jim joined us no later than 2 weeks ago, talking about the potential of Vlady Guerrero Jr. to the Mets, but now we have to not only talk about what's happened since then on the Mets connection of Vladdy, but how the Toronto Blue Jays absolutely want Pete Alonso. Could we see a swap of the first baseman as soon as this offseason, or at absolute latest, Alonso goes to Toronto this offseason, the Mets get Vladdy next offseason? That is what we're going to touch on, the potential or lack thereof of a Vladdy trade, especially after the big sweepstakes has finally come to an end. Roki Sasaki, drumroll please. As a surprise to absolutely nobody, he's an LA Dodger. Roki joins Yoshinobu Yamamoto, a healthy Shohei Ohtani once he's back in the groove of things, a Tyler Glasnow, a Blake Snell, a Clayton Kershaw, a Tony Gonsolin, a Dustin May, a Bobby Miller, what have you. This should be illegal. It's downright disgusting. That is how good and how elite and how deadly the LA Dodger lineup is in the rotation front, as they have signed Roki Sasaki to a deal at $6.5 million. The Toronto Blue Jays boosted their bonus to over $10 million, but it wasn't enough. Color me surprised. The Blue Jays miss out on a key guy in the offseason. We're going to hear Jim's live thoughts on that here very shortly, as a diehard Blue Jay fan and a fantastic evaluator on MLB entirely, not only for the Blue Jays, but for everyone in the game. We're going to touch on everybody, because not only are we highlighting the latest on Vladdy and his sweepstakes Alonso and what contract details has come out from last night, in which there was one key sliver that we're going to touch on in a little bit, everybody. From there, we're also going to get into the Mets bullpen moves. They have brought in AJ Minter, formerly of the Atlanta Braves, that we touched on a live stream earlier today. We're going to reiterate that along with what other moves could be next for this Mets bullpen. And speaking of bullpen and trying to acquire relievers, yeah, Starling Marte was almost a Kansas City Royal already, as recent reports from Pat Ragazzo on the beat through an affiliate with Sports Illustrated for the Mets did note earlier today that, yeah, Starling Marte to Kansas City fell through, but there were talks about it, and well, not necessarily fell through, but it didn't happen. We'll get into what that trade would have been for the Mets, what reliever they would have acquired, and why the Mets still may try to trade Marte this offseason, even though it isn't necessarily something that absolutely needs to happen. 1200, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Check Ben Nicholson-Smith. I will gladly do that. Ben Nicholson-Smith, who covers the Toronto Blue Jays, who I know a lot of Blue Jay fans like. Let me double check that right now just to make sure that it's nothing too notable. I doubt that it is, but let's see. Ben says Blue Jays have been discussing a potential deal with Anthony Santander today. Sources tell me. Okay, talks picked up this morning, not done, but there's mutual interest. Now, I'm inclined to believe that if Anthony Santander goes to the Toronto Blue Jays, it makes a Pete Alonso to the Toronto Blue Jays less likely, right? So we're going to hear Jim's thoughts from a Blue Jay fan perspective on Toronto going all in now on Santander potentially versus a team like the Mets, who already have their DH pretty much solidified now with Jesse Winker and Marte in the platoon role, barring changes heading into the regular season. Dave, thank you so much for the donation. Minter, good pickup. I tend to agree. I'm very happy with the AJ Minter pickup. Obviously, Tanner Scott was the best guy available, but AJ Minter is a really nice prize here for what the Mets are getting for an immediate lefty option that can help them in high leverage situations to set up Edwin Diaz throughout the 2025 season. But guys, let's do a quick roll call in here, and then we'll pretty much get it rolling right away with my guy Jim. We got a lot to get into. We got some plenty news that we're going to highlight. I'm very happy to do that with each and every one of you tonight, this evening, day, night, whenever you're watching this. We appreciate you guys. Smash that like and subscribe button as your first chime in, as we have you covered with all things Mets news, rumors, every single topic imaginable, regular season, in-game live streams, post-game live streams after every single game. We're your one-stop shop for all things Mets here on YouTube, and thank you guys so much for the support. Ben, Mark, Andre, Steve, great member, how you doing? And I do agree that on the front it looks weak, but it looks a lot less weak if you bring Alonso back or just supplement that power elsewhere with a move that the Mets have yet to do. Brad, Eugene, Edwin, Matty C, how you doing? Drew, Juan Diaz, great member and moderator. Mike Nixon, great member and moderator. 1200, thank you so much again for the donation. Japan players ain't it for us. Stay with DR and PR. I mean, it's trending that way, you know, intentionally or not. It certainly is. Harrison, how you doing? All my amazing members. Xavier Gonzalez, great member. Happy to have you in here. Sean Daniels, Leo, great member, going up the list here. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. Let's see, Lounge Zaner, great member as well. Thank you kindly. Everyone chiming in live on a replay. Thank you guys for taking your time tonight. It really means a lot. But now, folks, let's get into this one. And I know our New York Knicks are playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Garden. Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, regular season homecoming there back in New York, and I can't wait to watch the highlights. Hopefully the Knicks muster a big win there after getting a big overtime win against the 76ers without Cat and without Joel Embiid. And now we're not going to have Cat again tonight against the T-Wolves, so we'll see what Randle and everyone else has in store, folks. But before we deep dive it all, and before we bring in our guy Jim shortly here to break down the latest on the Vladdy front, Alonso front, and everything else I just highlighted, everybody, thank you so much for hearing from our amazing sponsor that many of you guys know very well at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. If you guys don't know the drill by now, listen up. If you guys are into sports betting, certainly like to sports bet, but know how to bet responsibly, make sure you're not getting yourself involved with something that you can't handle. BetUS has you covered for whatever you want to bet on. Simply head over to betus.com.pa today. Use our promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube will get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second or third for whatever you want to bet on. And I hammered here a straight bet on the Charlotte Hornets to actually not necessarily win, but make sure that they don't lose by more than 4 points or win outright. This is the ball versus ball matchup. Lonzo Ball versus LaMelo Ball. Lonzo back after multiple years with injury that we know, and LaMelo Ball, who's one of the best young guards in the game, in my humble opinion. I think LaMelo's going to ball out against his older brother, and I love the chances of Charlotte actually playing a little bit of an upset here over the Bulls, but regardless, I think it's going to be a close game. I like this one a lot in the ball-to-ball matchup, so I'm hammering this as a $50 bet that can win me hopefully north of a $100 total payout, should they either make sure that they don't lose by more than 4 points or just win outright. Good luck to anyone that's tailed this bet, but please know I'm not a sports betting expert, just a diehard fan that loves to place daily bets here at BetUS. Now, folks, let's get right back in this one. Fletch, how you doing? Great member. Happy to have you in here. Ben, how you doing? Arenado, I've talked about in the past. Arenado just makes less sense. Like, I can understand Arenado if you allow Alonso to walk and you put Vientos at first. I can get with Arenado then, especially if we're pretty much just taking on his salary like a salary dump in that sense. I can get with it. That's definitely a better team that I think starting your year with your in-house options, because Arenado, even with having at right around a league average bat right now, is still a guy that would be capable and superior at the hot corner position. That would shore up our defense fine there. So yeah, I wouldn't be completely opposed to Arenado, but I have my reservations with him, and I think it has a lot more to do with him denying the Mets a couple years ago, back when he went from the Rockies to the Cardinals. And Arenado always has this sassiness, there's been an aura with him that reminds me a lot of Charmin Ultrasoft, and I'm semi-joking as I say this, going back to the St. Louis Cardinals and Mets brawls in like 2021, etc. I just haven't been on the right side of Arenado fandom for a number of years, so I think that goes a little bit in hand with my lack of interest when we talk about a veteran like him, especially one whose bat has completely fallen off the past couple of years. Let's see, Shohei's coming back from TJ, absolutely, but here's the thing. Even with question marks, there's no denying Juan Diaz that if those guys just play their potential, that being Sasaki and that entire Dodger rotation, they have 5 ace caliber starters right there. You can't deny that. Clayton Kershaw being your number 6 is just disgusting. It's not fair. Tony Gonsolin, should he be healthy, has a lot that he can do. Gavin Stone, who I didn't even mention earlier if I didn't state him already. There's just so many that they can pick from. Dustin May, who's nasty. But we're going to talk about more of the nastiness that is the Dodgers and how both the Mets and the Blue Jays are going to go about this and the Vladdy and Alonso stuff here right now with my man at Ball Cap Sports. Jim, do you hear me, brother?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you. I think we got you in. I think we're locked and loaded. Oh, Jim, what a day. What a day, Jim. I'm like, okay, we pushed our stream for yesterday. For people that don't know, Jim and I were going to be doing this show yesterday, but we both ended up going live because of just all the news happening, not only with Jesse Winker, but the Vladdy and Alonso stuff. We're like, we'll let it marinate. We'll come back today. And here, as we're about to get set, you already just did another live stream because Roki Sasaki, as a surprise to absolutely nobody, is an LA Dodger. So, Jim, let me just start with your initial reaction as a Blue Jay fan. How much did you get your hopes up? Did you get your hope? Actually, give me 1 second. I'm getting a quick call. 1 second, everybody.
What's up?
Okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, that was hilarious timing. Of course that happened. And of course my doorbell just rang. So My infant son is probably in the process of about to wake up. Fantastic way to start the stream today, everybody.
Let's go.
We
There
love
you
to
go.
see it. But all right, Jim. So let's talk about the Blue Jay fan perspective briefly here in the Sasaki sweepstakes. You found out that was coming down to the Jays and the Dodgers, right? I'm getting the PTSD of John Morosi and Shohei from last year, like it was yesterday, right? Were you in the same category? Did you have any sliver of hope or optimism, or did you feel like he was a slam dunk to land with the Dodgers when everything was said and done?
So I have always been Camp Dodgers with this thing. I this morning after we heard the Padres were out, I took my Dodger comfort level from 70% to 90%. I had 70 Dodgers, 25 Padres, 5% Blue Jays, and I absorbed most of that to the Dodgers and gave a sliver to the Blue Jays. But when we saw the trade go down with the Jays acquiring Miles Straw, his salary, and getting some not luxury. I keep calling it. I'm calling it everything under the sun except for what it actually is, which is international bonus pool allotment. When they did that, I started to think they might know something. Like they may feel like, or may have heard, if you can get us another $1 million, or if it wasn't that, they felt good about it anyway, and they wanted to get more money so they could spread it around to their other international signing picks. But in the end, that trade looks really bad now because they obviously did it before they knew that Roki was a possibility or that Roki was coming. Don't you love it? It's the difference between forward thinking and ass backwards. And the Blue Jays front office is ass backwards, and the Dodgers front office is forward thinking. The Dodgers pull off a trade with the Phillies after they have the word from Roki publicly that he's coming. Right. And the Blue Jays are doing it before. And not only are they doing it before, but they're also eating the Miles Straw contract. And the Dodgers, instead of pulling off a trade where they're going to eat some garbage salary, they're just sending a prospect out and getting some international bonus money. It's the difference. It's the reason why the Dodgers win this. And we should have seen that. I mean, look, many of us did see this coming, but it is clearly evident. And we should have known it. We should have known it and been able to just put it to bed when we found out it was the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Blue Jays. Because no disrespect to our boy Borda, the Padres are a house on fire right now.
Oh my, yeah, he's more concerned doing like IRL content now than he is the Padres.
Seriously, they are a house on fire. The Toronto Blue Jays front office is an absolute mess. They continue to fail, and when it was between the Dodgers and that well-run organization and the back-assward Blue Jays, the house on fire Padres, it was obvious. There would have been more suspense if we thought, if we had learned that the final three were the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets. That would have been more suspenseful than what it ended up being, because it was almost two obvious no's against a Dodgers team that, and I'll say this to those that want to get mad and say this is bad for baseball. Anger is a neighbor to envy. And I think a lot of people are confusing their anger with envy. So many of us wish that our team could operate like the Dodgers.
Absolutely, yes.
Wish that our team had players that other players wanted to go and play with. Wish that our front office operated as well and as smart. I can say as a Blue Jay fan, I'm not mad at the Dodgers. I'm envious of the Dodgers, and I wish that I could have one of those three facets working in my favor, but I have none of them. And I know we're going to dig into Vladdy, and that maybe rears its ugly head again. The reason why people don't want to go play for the Blue Jays has nothing to do with the border. It has nothing to do with tax rates. They're paid in American dollars, not Canadian dollars. It's none of that. It's the question mark about the future of the team.
Exactly. Your front office and your coaching staff might not be here next year. So that there is the problem.
See, the coaching staff, maybe. I think this is more about Vladdy. When you're face of the franchise player, and not just face of the franchise now, dude, face of the franchise all-time player is being mistreated like Vladdy has been, and you got your other superstar, Bo Bichette, clearly has no interest in coming back. What does that tell to the rest of the player fraternity? Says it's not a good place to be. And then when you, on top of that, have just the uncertainty of the future of the team, Why would anybody want to go there? Why would Roki want to go there, sign up for 6 years with the Blue Jays, knowing that after year one, it could all go completely circling down the drain? So
Right.
it may certainly have reared its ugly head. If they had a Vlady Guerrero Jr. extension done, maybe it helps their chances with Roki, maybe not. But I think that if you had a Vlad extension done, it certainly would have helped with this off season, which so far looks like the biggest embarrassment in the history of off seasons.
There is not one team that appreciates the Blue Jays offseason more than the Cleveland Guardians. You guys have been straight up your salary dump for them.
Yes,
From Andres Jimenez, who, again, Jimenez is a very talented player. I like him. I have no ill will with him. But I can see exactly why Cleveland was like, oh, yeah, the first couple years of his contract, we were paying half of his AAV. Now it's like fully kicked in.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of that while we can. And that's where Toronto came in. So I know I'm as an outsider, I'm as frustrated as one can be with the Blue Jays operation, because I will always have an issue with them going back to how they did not go anywhere with that offense from 3 years ago. That'll always stick with me. And now we're reaching a point where Vladdy, Bo, these are two guys that might not even be in Toronto after the 2025 season. So let's pivot now, because listen, I know that my Mets need to do more in order to feel more comfortability, and the fans have more comfortability in handling the Roki Sasaki part Dodgers now, with having a freaking rotation where your three-headed monster are guys that won the WBC together. Like it's honestly comical to the point of how drastic things can look from one team to the next. Not only how the Dodgers look to everyone else, but just the Dodgers versus the Pittsburgh Pirates, if you just look at how they operate, right? Just the drasticness is insane. But all right, let's get into the Vlady Alonso stuff, because so much has happened, and I'm gonna speed run everything we know to this point, and then I want to hear all your thoughts on it, on the potential of the swap. Do you think that Toronto is so unbelievably desperate right now that they're like, Pete, just take this 7 years, please, we'll give it to you. Just you gotta come here. You know, like, have we reached that point with Toronto, or Pete Alonso is your saving grace? Is it Anthony Santander that you guys are in active contract negotiation with, per Ben Nicholson-Smith, that we just saw reported minutes ago? Okay, well, we know Pete Alonso approached the Mets with an exclusive 3-year offer, including opt-outs. The presumption is that that contract was at least $90 million or more. The Mets said no. They countered with a 3-year offer of their own with opt-outs, which we didn't know until late last night, because Will Salmon did correct himself, and I appreciate that, Will. Thank you. Initially, it was just a straight 3-year deal that we heard, but now it did, in fact, include opt-outs. So you can't even say that Alonso wasn't given an option to opt out after the first year of the deal, because he was, but the Mets are evaluating Alonso closer to Christian Walker than they are anything else, and that is where we have the gap, at least right around $20 million, because the Mets offered north of $70 million over a 3-year deal with opt-outs, and at around $23 million AAV. That's still, again, better than what you're seeing guys with Matt Olson for the most part. You're in that range, so it's not like the Mets did a terrible job on their approach for what his value is right now, given his market. But the reality is Alonso feels like he's an anomaly in a first base class, where the reality is the market doesn't have him viewed as the anomaly that he feels that he is when it comes to the term and the AAV. Now we've reached a point that the Mets feel that they're pivoting. They put in the public eye, and they purposely have put this in the public eye to put all the pressure on Alonso, saying, hey, we're perfectly fine without you. Like, we know that we just landed Juan Soto. We know we're technically a better team already heading into next season. On that alone, between yourself and Soto, we do know that by pairing you with Soto, we make our lap a lot deeper than what it currently is, and we would like to make that happen, but you're going to have to be the one to circle back, coming to us and saying, okay, I'm willing to take the contract that we initially proposed, unless we can try to still reach in the middle. It feels like the Mets are going to continue to pivot, and for good reason, whereas the Blue Jays are one of multiple teams heavily in the mix for Alonso now. To what degree, that's a great question, but per Will Salmon and Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, yesterday, he did state that Alonso may very well get the dollars of what he turned down from the Mets on that extension of 160. And if you take out that first year of what would have been buying out that final RB for Alonso, it's around $135 million or so. Are the Toronto Blue Jays willing to get closer to that dollar amount and term versus what the Mets are willing to do? That might be the case. So with the Toronto Blue Jays wanting to pair Alonso with Vladdy, potentially giving Vladdy more third base time, what are your thoughts on not only everything we've heard to this point, but the potential of actually a reality where the Blue Jays may land Alonso, and if Vladdy isn't traded this offseason, he very well could be a guy either dealt at the trade deadline to a team like the Mets, or with the Mets literally going all in on him next offseason. So what's your thoughts on all the latest with Vladdy and Pete?
So I don't think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gets traded before the trade before July.
Oh, final thing
And
I want to say, just for my
yeah,
viewers, Jim, my graphic that everyone's seen with the Vladdy stats, I know he's not 28 years of age. I just haven't changed it yet. It was an error on my end. I had Alex Verdugo stats in there prior. He's 25, okay? So when you look at the numbers, once more, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not 28 years of age. Please ignore that little hiccup on my end. Back to you, Jim.
yeah, no problem. So the the Blue Jays are in a similar situation with Vladdy that the Angels were with Shohei Ohtani. And it's a situation where they really can't trade him unless you get to the last possible moment, which is the trade deadline, and you are clearly out of it, right? The Mets held on to Pete Alonso because they were trying to win and they were still in it. The Astros held on to Bregman because they were trying to win. They were still in it. Even the Angels, when they approached the trade deadline, if you remember, they made a bunch of moves to try to go for it because they were still hovering around 500.
Right.
The Toronto Blue Jays cannot trade Vladdy unless we get to the end of July and they are 15 games below 500, clearly out of it. Get what you can. That is the best case scenario. You can't let him walk for nothing. I don't think you see a trade happen this offseason because it signals to the fan base that the franchise is in trouble, that the next couple of years are uncertain, and you don't want that. And if you are Ross and Mark and you try to walk around with your chest puffed out like you're smarter than everybody else, you don't want to have the stink of we traded Vladimir Guerrero Jr. away before we even started to play ball. Like, let's find out let's find out we're bad
alone.
first.
They
right,
have
exactly.
to prioritize those things. That's true.
Exactly. Yeah. Let the players have a say. Let the players stink and underperform, and then the team's terrible, and then you trade them. Or again, they stay in it, even if they are maybe not a legitimate playoff run contender, but they can maybe grab a wild card spot. They hold on to him, and then he walks. And if he walks in free agency, then Vladdy shoulders some of the blame. But if you trade him, it's all on you as the front office. And that may be something, again, these two guys that are very prideful don't want to have to deal with, not really from the fan base, but from the ownership up above. My hope is that ownership steps in, that we have a deadline of reporting to camp. That's when Vladdy's not going to engage in conversations anymore, negotiations. So between now and then, Ross and Mark can do their thing, try to work out a deal, try to lowball Vladdy time and with offer after offer, not getting to what Vladdy wants. But I'm hopeful that Ross and Mark and Ed Rogers have had a conversation, and Ed has said, guys, go ahead, do your thing, but do not let him leave because of money. We can't let him go to the Mets. We sure as hell can't let him go to the Red Sox. Don't let this fall apart because of money. And then as we approach the deadline, when Ross and Mark still have not gotten a job done, Ed Rogers comes in and says, guys, you had your chance. I'm going to step up. That's my only hope, because I don't think that the front office, the GM and the president of baseball operations will get the job done. I'm hopeful that ownership steps up and says, what did he want? He wanted $450. Okay, give him $450. Matter of fact, give him $465 for his troubles because I want him happy. He does so much for the franchise, having him here. As for Pete, I'm very interested with this whole Pete Alonso thing. The Santander piece, to me, I know they're talking right now. Maybe we can be surprised and they can get a deal done. But I almost feel like desperate needs to meet desperate here. The Blue Jays are desperate. Pete Alonso's camp feels desperate. Those two coming together almost feels like a perfect match, because Pete's not going to get his money from anywhere else. The Blue Jays can't get anybody to take their money. It almost feels like a perfect marriage here.
Jim, you want to know what this really feels like, and you're going to get a kick out of this. This feels like when it's 2:30 a.m. You're at the club. You're the last one there. Yeah. And there's one last lady there waiting for you. Was she your first selection? No. Was she your second? No. But you've reached a point in the night where you're at the point, and you both have mutually looked and agreed that this is what it is now. Yeah, right. But you have to settle at some point. And exactly. It's a great way to think on where Alonso's shrunken market is, and how the Toronto Blue Jays are like, we have hundreds of millions to throw at someone, and no one's going to take it.
Exactly. I mean, it makes perfect sense for those two to come together. And if you're the Blue Jays, you're going to try to get an extension done with Vladdy. But if ownership isn't going to come in and save the day, and you don't get an extension done, at least Pete's your first baseman moving beyond, and he's a name, and he's a power threat. And he could still, I believe Pete Alonso has a 45, 50 homer season still in that barrel.
In Toronto, I think he would thrive in that ballpark. Absolutely. I'm not denying
think
that.
You can't take that to the bank every year because he's going to have his ups and his downs. But I think you've got a dangerous bat there. And at least it could be a selling point for other free agents as you're trying to still convince people to come out to this ballpark that the team has spent like $1 billion on to renovate, bringing in new concessions and restaurants and patios and hangouts and cup holders and all this other crap. So you gotta, and I'm not joking, they finally put cup holders in the 100 level.
There we go, baby. Lock in season tickets.
Exactly. But if no one's there, the cup holders were a waste of money. They finally did the cup holders, and the franchise is going to go to garbage. So they've got to move. They've got to act. It does feel like Pete could be a fit. Maybe can they convince Santander? Come on over. We got Pete coming. It'll be you, Pete, and Vladdy for 1 year. We don't know what the future holds with Vladdy, but if Vladdy leaves, wouldn't it though? And if you're the Blue Jays, and if Vladdy leaves, but at least you have Pete and Anthony Santander, and you can, bring in another free agent, you can keep the viability. You can keep your relevancy with those two because you can still put together a pretty damn good lineup. And there's a lot of young talent. I know it's not a highly regarded farm system, but Aurelvis Martinez is back off of his suspension. And
attaboy, baby. Him and Noelvi Marte. Can they stop painting out or something?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they went to the wrong med club. So there's something there. But again, Blue Jays and Pete, it feels like desperate meeting desperate. Again, it's 2:30 in the morning. The bar's closing down. Hey, I don't like you. You don't like me, but we're all we got. And that may be where it goes. So I feel like Pete's more realistic. They're pursuing Santander. It's kind of embarrassing. Like it just adds to the embarrassment that already we get that Anthony Santander thing. Like, come on, man. Like, let the Blue Jays let us lick our wounds before you go out there.
No, this is also strategic.
One.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's so. Listen, I certainly enjoy covering a major market team in the sense that as this is not only my hobby but my day-to-day living, that there's always something going on with the Mets, and they know how to especially drag out something terribly long, whether it was the Soto sweepstakes build up, the Alonso stuff now, what have you. Blue Jays, it's a lot of similarity there because you guys are constantly in headlines. You're the only face of a baseball team in the entire country. So that alone is always going to have you locked in because when you think baseball, yes, TSN and Sportsnet, I think of hockey first, but then they go to the Blue Jays. What's happening with Toronto? And now with the pivot to Santander, again, I think Anthony Santander honestly might be the biggest lock out of the bats for Toronto. When I look at him, Bregman, and Alonso, we've heard reports that Bregman has been thrown an absolute bag by Toronto, and he said no to. Like, he just wasn't interested in. So, not shocking to hear, but okay, so you're telling me that there's a team that's willing to kind of meet your closest, like what you want on demand-wise, and you're just like, nah. Like, that's...
I know.
But Bregman wants a team like Boston, I'd imagine, or a team like Detroit, barring changes at this point in time. But Santander... Go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
No, you're good. Santander, though, is interesting in the sense of you would pry him away from a rival there in the Orioles in the division. He's had 3 consecutive seasons with 28 home runs, and he's a switch hitter. That's a rare thing to find in the free agent market who's only 30 years of age right now. But when you look at what your outfield and DH configuration is, I think it makes a lot of sense. Listen, Santander's not a guy that you're going to want to throw in the outfield much, but if he's your everyday DH to pair with Vladdy, that's a lethal 1-2 punch of a duo there to then try to work around and hope that you get some things to blossom from a Boba Ship bounce back year luck, hopefully, along with other things kind of going in your favor there for the Jays. And Alonso, again, if Alonso lands with the Toronto Blue Jays, okay. I have no problem with Pete Alonso being a Toronto Blue Jay if it means that Vlady Guerrero Jr. is a Met at some point this year. And I'm being blunt in saying that. Whether it is now, whether it's a deadline, whether it's next offseason, I will be very happy as long as, A, they replace Alonso to a degree this offseason. Even if it means you don't completely replace him, if you can replace him to a degree, I'm comfortable with it, along with the potential of Vladdy. But here's the thing. Pete Alonso still feels like a guy that just like, you got to see it to believe it. I'm still calling like so much bluff and this nonsense. They just feel like they're being petty back and forth again. Are we really going to let Pete walk in a fucking, pardon my French, a $20 million gap? Like, is that where we're really getting now? Where, okay, the Mets are that confident in not only replacing him, but like, they just are really cool with not having a future with Alonso. And the fact that they've been so reluctant from the start, it tells you all you need to know on how other teams have perceived him to this point. And that's why his market has reached the point that we've gotten to where, no, Pete, you're not getting 6 or 7. No, you're not getting 5. You approached the Mets with an exclusive 3-year deal and an opt-out. Are you even approaching other teams with opt-outs right now? Because it makes less sense. Think about it. You saw how much Alonso struggled throughout the regular season and the high-pressure cookie year as a Scott Boras client. Yes, he stepped up in postseason. I will always appreciate him for that. But the exact reason why he couldn't handle the pressure in the 162 is the exact reason why I have pessimism if he stays signed with Toronto on a 3-4 year deal with an opt-out. Why am I not going to think that, oh, he's going to struggle to adjust now with a new team and then have the mental hurdles of, oh my God, I need to try to ball out again or I'm not going to be getting a bag that I want again. You know, there's a lot at stake here for him.
The qualifying offer is definitely a hindrance here, and that's the Mets would be the only team they would offer the qualifying offer because no one's gonna pay that qualifying offer, and then potentially Pete opts out after 1 year. So
fair,
you'll have to get those guaranteed years from him. But you know, if there is, I'll say this: if there is a place that Vladdy, if there is a team that Vladdy's playing for next year, if it can't be the Toronto Blue Jays, I would probably prefer it to be the New York Mets.
Hell yeah, because you want to go to spring training. You want to see Vladdy again in PSL.
There you go. Exactly. Maybe I could get him to sign my Vladdy Blue Jays jersey. I'll get him to sign that thing with wearing a Mets hat. So, but I got to get him out of the division. I got to get him out of the league. Like if he goes and plays for the Red Sox for a decade.
Oh, you're cooked.
Oh my God, that's the worst thing. That's the worst possible scenario. I don't think he's going to go to the Yankees, but he could go to the Boston Red Sox, and that would be a big problem. If he goes with the Mets, fine. Him and Soto just rake for a decade. Okay, cool. That'll be fun to watch. You guys can go up against the big bad Dodgers, and it'll be a hell of a decade. But I think one thing that could be playing into this whole thing is Vladdy's extension deadline.
Right.
So if Pete Alonso's still a free agent as we get into the middle of February and that deadline has passed and the Toronto Blue Jays, let's say they don't have an extension done, the Mets are probably going to say, sorry, Pete, like no shot. We're just going to go pay the most for Vladdy next year because Juan Soto would really like to play with Vladdy and we would like to have Vladdy. So bye, Pete. But let's say the Blue Jays do the unthinkable and get a deal done with Vladdy. Then maybe something changes in the Mets tune because that Vladdy 2026 situation isn't looming anymore. Right. It's off the table because he's locked in with the Blue Jays. I think that Vladdy's process is having a big impact on what's going on with Pete right now and teams being reluctant because the Mets could always trade for Luis Arraez. Like you could get now that the Padres.
I'm sorry, but can we stop this Arraez nonsense?
Let me bring it up. Let me throw this out there. Let me throw it out there. So the San Diego Padres, I believe now that they know they're not getting Roki Sasaki, should hold on to Dylan Cease if they want to compete, right? So if you're going to trade one of those pieces, it's got to be Luis Arraez. You could get Luis Arraez for next to nothing. When it comes to prospects and what you would have to give up, you could, I believe what will happen when Luis Arraez is traded to whoever he's traded to, it will look like a steal. So if you could steal Luis Arraez for 1 year and you could have a guy with a 385 on base percentage getting on base for Lindor and for Soto and for Vientos, you don't want that?
The reason why I don't want that is for two factors. A, I hate the idea of having a first baseman that doesn't have any power. I think that goes in hand with being spoiled with Alonso, but I've always viewed the first base and DH positions as your prototypical power positions more often than not. And to not have that and to be as drastic as what Arraez and Alonso certainly aren't as the same player, that would bother me. And secondly, if Luis Arraez loses his contact ability by any stretch, if he gets the yips, if this guy forgets how to hit,
that's not going to happen though.
No,
that's not going to happen.
But that it's the
he's a short thing.
But here's the thing though. all it takes is one down contact year and he has zero value. Not only because of the fact that he will not be as much of a plate setter for Soto among others, but the fact that he's versatile, but he's not proficient in any defensive position. You could put him in first, you could put him at second, you could put him all over the diamond, but he's not really good in those positions. So it's like, what it makes more sense to me. It makes 10 times more sense to me if Luis Arraez is a Met, because Jeff McNeil has been parted with, and the Mets do not feel comfortable enough with our in-house option still in Acuna, in Williams, in Mauricio, what have you, right? Like, that would make sense. Otherwise, I think for Alonso, if the Mets don't bring in Alonso, I think Mark Vientos is our first baseman. I think the Mets will either go with their Brett Beatty's of the world toying the hot corner, or they may F around and see Alex Bregman. Buddy, you still want 5 years, and no one's giving you 5 years. Take the 3-year with an opt-out, like Matt Chapman. Let's just get cooking, all right? Like, that is something I'd be in favor of. And I know you got to run out of here because you got dad duty, like we all. But Jim, before I let you out of here, what are your closing remarks on the latest here in Mets and Blue Jay land?
Oh my God! But I mean, disappointment as a Blue Jay fan. This offseason continues to just be one nonstop kicking the nuts. It is just literally the little turnstile. It's just somebody else comes around and it's another shot. Hopefully something can turn around. I will consider this offseason a win if they can get a Vlady Guerrero Jr. extension done. If they can get Vladdy extended, I'll consider it a win. And again, like I said, if Vladdy's got to go anywhere, I would probably choose the New York Mets. So we'll see what happens.
Jim, I'm going to let you go the same way that you let everyone go. If it's a low, let it go.
Low, let it go.
Let it fly,
yes,
baby.
Sir. Yes, sir. All right, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, sounds great, Jim. Thank you. Everyone, make sure to subscribe to Ballcap Sports whenever you guys got the chance for all your MLB coverage. All right, guys, Jim is out of here, but the show continues to roll. I love having him on, and it was actually perfect timing. Literally, we found out the Santander news as we first got rolling. Harrison, thank you for spamming in the chat the tweet from Ben Nicholson-Smith. Sometimes he's spam and it's not relevant, but that was one of those times where it was absolutely relevant. So thank you so much for that. But guys, let's now transition into getting into the final key topics that I have for you tonight before we wrap up our second live stream of the day. And if you haven't already, please continue to smash a like and subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. We got north of 1,000 people in the live show tonight. So if you guys could help us get a 500 likes at any point watching live on a replay, it does go a long way. And we're only, guys, just over 100 subs away, 100 or 2 from 31,000 on the platform. Every single 1,000 subscriber milestone that we hit this year, we are doing a Mets related giveaway. We gave away a Juan Soto jersey when we hit 30,000 subscribers. What are we going to give away when we hit 31K? You'll just have to wait and see. But it will be an awesome giveaway like we have done plenty on the platform. So hit those buttons. Join the largest Mets community on YouTube in case you guys haven't already. And thank you kindly. Haram, thank you for the donation. I know that we have play to get into on the front of the donation front, so I'm going to address the 3 that we got and go from there. Juan Diaz, great member moderator, donated $5 holla and is the following, and I quote, "No team is going to trade blue chip prospects for half a year rental. Jay's got to trade him now or watch him walk for nothing." I disagree with that, Juan Diaz, because at the end of the day, if Vladdy plays like Vladdy's been playing, and he's a hot commodity at the trade deadline, like if he's available at the trade deadline, teams will give up an arm and a leg for him because they will know the certainty and how much greater it gives them the potential to not necessarily have a deep playoff run, but potentially win a World Series championship. That right there, you will see the fluctuation and desperation from teams. This is not a situation where Vladdy isn't worthwhile to trade as a rental. No, I think when it comes to who's ever trying to acquire Vladdy, if you're going to trade for him, you have to make sure that you have that trade interest knowing that you're going to try to extend him. Otherwise, then yeah, I think it makes zero sense to trade any blue chip prospects for a half-year rental of a guy that's going to hit the free agent market. But if you're a team like the Mets, for example, after, say, maybe not having the first base position, you're liking the first half, maybe Alonso does walk. You go with Vientos. Vientos doesn't work the way that you hoped at first base. Vladdy becomes available at the trade deadline. You can give up pieces of farm. You don't love the idea, but you know if you land him, it makes you 10 times better for the remainder of the year to push for a deep playoff run. That right there, that desperation level is why I wouldn't be shocked if a team goes out of the way to do whatever it takes for Vladdy, but landing him and to have him beyond the 2025 season, are two different things. And that is why he will be a certain big topic that we will continue to touch on as the Vladdy extension talks, or lack thereof, continue on this offseason. Josh, thank you for the donation too. I'll get to that shortly. Hey Jack with a $5 holla states the following: Mets need to do more than filling things internally if we want to compete with the Dodgers. We should trade for Vlad, but we should extend him if we do. Taking the words out of my mouth, hey Jack. I agree with you there, literally. Haram with a $5 holla says, with Budo, Diaz, Garrett, Nunez, and now Mentor, and even Brazoban, do we need another reliever? You can never have enough relievers. And yes, the Mets will likely land one more high leverage guy, and I think the Mets will then have an abundance of them, which is great. Brazoban has not been talked about much at all, but guys, Huascar Brazoban might be absolute nails for the Mets next season. He didn't adjust too well after being acquired, but Brazoban, if you deep dive his numbers and you deep dive his approach, the guy's nasty, and I really think he's going to be one of those more slept-on reliever options that the Mets have, like Danilo Nunez returning, like Jose Budo to a degree amount of. The Mets have a lot of very intriguing bullpen options, like a lot of them. They really do. I feel a lot more comfortable heading into this season with how the bullpen is currently constructed versus what it was a year ago. But are they done in the bullpen? No. I think the Mets still add at least one more arm of significance there, whether that is an awesome, a David Robertson or a Kirby Yates or what have you. I don't think they're done there yet, and for good reason. I think the Alonso pivot goes directly in hand as to why. It gives them further flexibility and comfort in order to do exactly that. So, Haram, thank you for the donation. Now getting on to the next one that we have in the chat. All great members, guys. Thank you kindly for all of them. Brazoban blows. Again, you might say that now, but I'm telling you, I think we're going to see a lot of upside with Huascar next season. That may surprise some of you guys. I really do. And especially to start the year in the Mets pitching lab, I think it's going to bode him really well versus that in-season adjustment after being dealt for the first time in his career. Again, those things can certainly impact players negatively. Josh with a $5 donation, great member as well, says, what's the most you would trade for Vladdy? I'm expecting Sproat, Clifford, Jet at minimum. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to envision not giving up those pieces, but I would be completely inclined to do that deal. Sproat is what has me most concerned. I think the Mets could pull off a trade for Vladdy without giving up Brandon Sproat. I think they absolutely still have enough of other assets to make it happen without giving up Sproat for Vladdy. But at the same time, if you're getting in a potential bidding war for Vladdy, where apparently they're seeking, at least the Juan Soto type deal, which honestly was a very favorable trade for the Yankees versus the Padres when it happened, because that was Drew Thorpe, pitching prospect, before he then got flipped to the White Sox and made his debut this past season. It was Michael Cain. It was Yoni Brito. It was one other, Kyle Higashioka, and that was about it. And like one other prospect, maybe. It wasn't like anything too drastic, and that got the job done for Soto to go from the Padres to the Yankees. And that is the kind of structure we're looking at, that the reports are being thrown out there right now. My God, sign me up. Why wouldn't you be in favor of that, right? I would. I absolutely would. That type of equivalent of a deal would have the Mets sitting very comfortable at their farm and having now Vlady Guerrero Jr. for the 2025 season. Alrighty, folks, let's shift now from the Alonso Vladdy talk for a minute, and let's get into some other keynotes I'd love to share with you guys. Let's see, guys. First, very cool, a little off topic. The Mets are favorites to sign third base. I'm going to butcher this entire name. Was it, Yosu? I have no clue how to pronounce this guy's name. I apologize. Third base prospect. All I can say is that he is a top 10 in the class of all position players in next year's IFA pool, and the Mets are projected to sign him as their biggest move. So it'll be another consecutive year where the Mets draft a top 5 or top 10 position player in the class, the way that they just did arguably the best in Ellie and Pena. They are now set to land a third base prospect next offseason, which is very exciting because you can never have enough good infield prospects. But with the Mets still having uncertainty at the hot corner, for all we know, this guy might be the future for us. So he's only 16 years of age right now, I'm sure. But, he has a chance for plus power, above average arm strength, average runner, 50 plus on the glove, comfortably a top 10 player in the class, according to Joe Doyle, who does a very good job there on the minor league front across Major League Baseball. So That is the latest IFA pick that a year from now, next January, when I say breaking news, the Mets have signed this kid, you guys will know exactly what we're referring to because we talked about it literally a year ago. That's how early these commitments happen. But, apologies, I had audio running through there. But Pat Ragazzo, love my guy Pat. We got to bring him back on the channel soon. It's been a minute. Pat Ragazzo, who's been covering the Mets greatly through an affiliate with Sports Illustrated on the beat for the Mets, he did note reportedly that the Mets actually had a deal, at least in negotiation, with the Kansas City Royals going back to around the winter meetings for Hunter Harvey. Now, this is an interesting one because the Mets were trying to trade Starling Marte in this deal, salary dumping him. Pardon me, not salary dumping him. I apologize. They would be eating a good chunk of his deal, and in return, the Mets would be getting a controllable reliever in Hunter Harvey. For those that don't know Hunter Harvey, Harvey got his absolute tit slipped by the Mets last year by the Washington Nationals. Then he got traded at the deadline to the Kansas City Royals. He was cheeks with them, posted over 6 ERA there, but that doesn't tell the whole story because Hunter Harvey has had back-to-back seasons in 2022 and 2023 at a 2.5 and then a 2.8 ERA and a good workload there by the Nationals in various situations. He posted right around a 4 ERA with the Nationals up until he got traded to the Kansas City Royals. Just wasn't a fit for them post-trade deadline. And Harvey, who the Mets clearly like, would be your Ryan Stanek replacement. So the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because even after the Mets signing AJ Minter today, it does not denounce their ability to still land a right-hand reliever there that they can have with high velocity. Ryan Stanek reunion, I'm absolutely in favor of, but clearly what the Mets were looking for here was a higher upside and more controllable Ryan Stanek-esque player and what they would have gone in Hunter Harvey. Harvey throws absolute gas. The guy sits 97 to 100 on the gun. Very similar to Ryan Stanek in aspects as to what their role would be if the Mets were to acquire them. So that is exactly why I'm emphasizing Hunter Harvey here, because this trade did not happen, and this may very well never happen now, knowing that the Mets have a DH platoon of Marte and of Winker, unless they go out and sign Santander. That would surprise us all at this point. That was the latest on the Marte trade rumblings, everybody. So I want to know your initial reactions to that. Tim Hill, again, I'm not opposed to Tim Hill, but I think the Mets landing Tim Hill is less likely after just landing AJ Minter. I'm not opposed to having two quality lefty options in the pen. Sign me up. One's a soft tosser. One is more sitting 93 to 95 plus on the gun there, and AJ Minter, which I like, but I would like the Mets to land a David Robertson or a Kirby Yates. I think that goes without saying. That would be awesome when you look at the guys still available as bullpen fits for this team and what they could provide. But that's the latest on Starling Marte, everybody. So, and Lounge, thank you so much for the $5 holla. I greatly appreciate that. Let me see, make sure I didn't miss any comments from earlier too. Lounge Zana, great member with the $5 holla, says, comparing Scott to AJ, I don't understand how he wasn't worth $9 million more. 3.64 WAR last 2 years versus AJ's ones at 8.5 million per WAR. That's 34. Yeah, there's a drastic difference, and the reason why AJ Minter is not getting what Tanner Scott money is because Tanner Scott is the sexiest name. He posted a 1.75 ERA across 72 outings or so this past season for both the Marlins and the Padres after he was traded there. The reason why people are so enamored with Scott over someone like AJ Minter is because Scott is like in the clear peak prime of his career. Whereas AJ Minter, we know AJ Minter. He's consistently been that go-to guy as your setup man for the Atlanta Braves for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years now. Scott has blossomed over the past 2 years greatly out of Miami, and now is looking like he's going to get a starter-type bag. That's the difference. Tanner Scott is seeking starter-type money with potential being stretched out not only as a multi-inning reliever, but with starter upside if a team is willing to go the lengths to do that. The Braves have been rumored as a team that might be willing to go there, but are they going to spend the money it's going to take in the AAV on a multi-year deal, say 3-4 years for Scott? Could he go to the Dodgers on a shit ton of deferments? Again, we'll see. I would love Tanner Scott, but it goes without saying, the Mets signing AJ Minter was clearly for the purpose of that being their Tanner Scott fit. And it makes perfect sense as to why the Mets did this. Not only a guy that they're very familiar with who's dominated in the NL East for the past 5+ years. He knows how to face all these rivals well, and he knows the Braves better than everyone else. So I love the fact that we just took one of the most reliable relievers in the Braves organization for the past number of years, and we brought him to Queens with $11 million average annual value with an opt-out after the first year and a total contract value of $22 million million across 2 seasons should he opt in for 2026. And I'd imagine that Minter probably will, even if he finds himself having a strong year with the Mets, because what you're letting AJ Minter is a guy that, yes, isn't as flashy as Tanner Scott. And the difference is Tanner Scott sits 97 to 100 on his fastball, whereas AJ Minter was 2 ticks down on the velo this year. Usually sits 96 there on the fastball and the cutter, but this year he was sitting around 93. But there's valid reasoning as to why this was, and that's what I would like to share, like I did on our live stream earlier. AJ Minter had hip injury all year long, had hip surgery. That is exactly why the velocity was in part down. Do I think AJ Minter healthy in this Mets pitching lab, starting in Port St. Lucie, working its way up, and spring training is going to bode well for him? I really think it does. Minter has been nails, and even in an injury-riddled year, he still posted a 2.62 ERA over 30 games there, just under 40 games as a matter of fact, 34 innings or so. Strong expected numbers with a 3.3 expected ERA, and AJ Minter is just one of 3 players that has accounted for 5+ WAR over the past 5 seasons as a lefty reliever. He joins the list of Josh Hader and Tanner Scott. So to any of you schmucks out there that think that this is a bargain bin signing, that think that this is a bad signing, I'm sorry, but you are not in the realm of reality. This is as high quality of a pickup for this Mets bullpen that you could essentially ask, not named Tanner Scott. And we'll find out what happens with Tanner. We'll see where he lands, and we can have our choice opinions and feelings when that happens. Should he land with a rival, and then we could be more bothered by it then. But given the value of this contract and given what you're getting, given the Mets needed for this bullpen, this is nothing short of a slam dunk pickup for what they actually needed. So that's what I have to say about that, guys. On the AJ Minter front, I love this pickup for them, and this gives them credibility. This gives them formidability in that bullpen as a setup option for Edwin Diaz. And if they land a righty option like a Yates, like a Robertson, then they're really cruising after already having Budo, after already having Danilo Nunez back and healthy, and after already having plenty of the other pieces that they currently have in their bullpen at this point in time. And to further just emphasize for a second on AJ Minter, I'm going to just pull up his Savant numbers once more for you guys, like I did on our live stream earlier today. These are the Kirby Yates numbers, so ignore them. They're sexy though. They're gorgeous. I mean, I'm salivating at the mouth at Kirby Yates in this Mets bullpen. Another former Atlanta Brave reliever that I would be in favor of, absolutely. But let's look here just for a second at AJ and what he did this past season. Guys, as you see here, at least league average, if not well above league average in every single statistic that we saw in 2024 rather. In 2023, when AJ Minter was healthy last, these were his numbers. 94th percentile in K percentage, 85th in whip percentage, 74th in chase percentage, 73rd in average exit velocity, 80th in fastball velocity, 79th in expected batting average, 85th in expected ERA. Just for context, he was actually more proficient in some of these areas in the 2024 shortened season for him, including ground ball percentage. See how he was well below league average there, was not inducing many ground ball outs. Walk percentage just above league average there. Hard hit percentage respectable in the 70th percentile. Fast forward a year later, hard hit percentage, he's in like the 85th to the 90th percentile. Ground ball percentage, he's in the right around 60th percentile. Everything's looking good. I'm loving AJ Minter, guys. You cannot go wrong with this as a bullpen pickup unless you just have the stubborn mentality that if it's not Tanner Scott, I want nothing to do with him, and that's how it is. How old is Captain Kirby? Captain Kirby is 37 years of age. Yeah, Kirby Yates is old. David Robertson is entering his age 40 season, but what do both these guys have in common? They're both absolute fine wines. They age like a fine wine, for that matter. They're ageless. They're timeless wonders. They're pitching the best baseball of their career, and they're not slowing down right now. And John, thank you for the kind words too. I'm happy to have you in here. But with that being said, everybody, that is about going to conclude our live show tonight. I apologize that I'm not going beyond an hour like I typically do, but we already went live once today, and I have yet to even start my day as I have been in the full swing of full-time work with everything in the baseball land today, not only here, but on the Bleacher Report app, as well as others, as well as being a full-time dad. So I'm going to go start my evening, have like my one of my first meals of the day and get myself situated for the rest of the night. So, guys, if any breaking news happens, obviously, we'll cover it right away. When we find out more news and everything that's going on in Mets land, we will cover it to a T like we do every single day here on the WardyNYM platform. I greatly appreciate you guys taking the day, night, evening, whenever you're watching this with me. It does go a long way. And if you guys could smash that like and subscribe button on your way out, hit that sub button, help us get a 31K subs, and help us get a 500 plus likes, would really mean a lot. Thank you guys for the endless support. I look forward to talking to you guys more in the near future, as soon as tomorrow. And be on the lookout, because in future live streams, we will definitely have more chat interaction. We will be taking callers again once we find out either that Alonso is in fact returning, or big news happens on the front of the Mets this offseason that is to a greater magnitude than AJ Minter that we saw today. Thank you guys again. And as always, no matter what, let's go.